We'll get started. I'm Elliot Lefkowitz. I'm the data secretary for the International Committee on Taxonomy of Viruses, the ICTV. And this is our second webinar. The last one was held about a year ago. Last year, we gave an overview of the ICTV website, database, the taxonomy. This year, what we want to concentrate on is the information provided by the ICTV through the website and its database. And so we have a number of speakers that are lined up to tell us about various aspects of our website and the data. And we're going to start off with the Vice President of the ICTV, Evelyn Andriansens, to give us an overview of how the ICTV, what it does, and a little bit on how it works.
Hello, everybody. I'm gonna quickly share my screen with you and see if we can get this into a slideshow. Elliot, can you confirm that you can see this?
Looks good.
All right. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. My name is Evelyn Andriansens, and as Elliot said, I'm the Vice President of the ICTV. I'm not going to talk to you very long. I'm just here to provide you with some welcome introduction. So the first question is, what are we? So we're the International Committee on Taxonomy of Viruses, and that means that we are an official committee that is charged by the International Union of Microbiological Societies to perform virus taxonomy. So our tasks are developing, refining, and maintaining virus taxonomy. Who are we? Most importantly, most of us are volunteers. So all of these positions that I will describe now are voluntary members from the virology community. So we are managed by an executive committee consisting of the president, vice president, business secretary, proposal secretary, and data secretary, who are the officers. Then in this executive committee, we have the subcommittee chairs who are in charge of their subcommittees that are doing the specific remits of the viruses, like the animal double-stranded DNA and retroviruses, the bacterial viruses, the archaeal viruses, the plant virus, and so forth. So there's currently 7 subcommittees, which each have their chairs, and those chairs are members of the executive committee. And then we have a number of elected members that are part of the executive committee. Most of these positions go by 3-year terms. In the subcommittees, we have a lot of study groups, and these study groups are defined by the subcommittee chairs and the membership as part of what are the focus areas that we need to take into account. Like we have in the bacterial viruses subcommittee, we have a study group on all the cytoviruses, for example, and each subcommittee organizes their study groups as they see the need. These study groups have study group chairs and members as well. Apart from that, we also have live and national members that are making up the membership of the ICTV. So why are we here today? Virus taxonomy is annually updated, so a lot of work goes on each year with submission of proposals and their approval at the ICTV, the EC meetings, and revisions. So there's always new taxa that we need to learn about. We've recently have introduced mega taxonomy, meaning that we have a lot of ranks now. We have realm, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species, and several sub-ranks of these. And recently, all species names across the subcommittees and across the realms have been changed to a binomial format, which is in the format of genus name and a species epithet. And all of these updates mean that there's a lot of information out there, and we want you to know how to find the information on your virus of interest. That's it for me. I will stop sharing and hand over to the next speaker.
Thank you, Evelyn. Okay, let me continue. And so just a couple of points to make. If you have questions, please use the Q&A feature of the webinar. There should be a little button that says Q&A, and you can type in your questions, and one of us will try to answer them live during the webinar, though that can get difficult. If we don't answer it during the webinar, we'll be sure to post answers after the webinar. Please don't use the chat. I'm not sure if it's available or not, but it's difficult to both monitor the chat and the Q&A. So we're going to use the Q&A feature. All right. So as Evelyn indicated, the ICTV is made up of all of the committees that do the actual work. And there are a list of procedures and such that are followed in order to produce the taxonomy and each release. We just had a new release for this past year last week. We aren't going to talk about that. That's something we talked about last year, but if you're more interested in how the ICTV does its work, please connect to the website. You'll see a lot of the website during this presentation. I'm not going to show it now, but ictv.global is the URL, and you might want to try to connect to that website now and then follow on as the different speakers are talking. So the agenda today is listed here. I won't go into detail right now, but as I indicated, we'll talk about the various resources that are available and how to use the important resources for finding information. I do want to start off by thanking the National Institutes of Health, the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases in the US that have provided a grant that supports a lot of the work for the current development of the current website and the database that drives that website that you see. That grant has another year and a half left of funding, and we hope to make a maximum use of that funding to enhance our features and resources even more than what we're doing now. That grant itself has provided funding for a number of different aims, and we've completed a lot of these in terms of overhauling the infrastructure that used to drive the website, providing as much information as possible and tools to make that information available. Outreach and training is important, and this webinar speaks to the need for outreach and training and showing people how to use our resources. And I'll talk about what we're doing today to provide all of these types of information on these aims, and then talk about what we're going to do in the future for the next couple of years in order to enhance things even more. Okay, and so what I want to do now is to just talk about a couple of the resources that are available that are important sources of information before I pass it on to the members of my group who actually do the real work, and they're going to talk about a lot of the features that they're responsible for. So I'm going to stop this share here, and what I want to do now is focus on two of the most important resources that provide the official taxonomy. There are really three ways that you can get the taxonomy of the ICTV. Let me just briefly show the homepage here. You see here the URL, ictv.global. Right at the top are the three important resources: the taxonomy browser that Dr. Steve Powell will be talking about. And I just want to briefly show the master species list and the virus metadata resource that give you something that you can download in the form of a spreadsheet and in essence carry with you the product of the ICTV. And so now let me bring that up. And here is, first of all, the master species list. And so the master species list is exactly what it sounds like. It is a list of all the current officially recognized species that the ICTV has determined that make up the taxonomy of all viruses that exist at this point in time. So importantly, the ICTV does provide the official taxonomy for all viruses. Anyone can make use of that taxonomy, and other resources such as NCBI or EMBL that provide sequence information utilize the ICTV taxonomy in order to classify the viruses for which they're acting as a database for all the sequences. So the master species list is a species-centric view of that taxonomy. If you download the spreadsheet and open it up, you see this introductory page that just indicates information about this initial version that I indicated just came out this past March 3rd. There will be subsequent versions, usually error correction versions of one type or another, and so that information will be provided here to tell you what's changed from the previous MSL. The heart of the MSL is a list of species. And what you see down here is the column that gives you the species and all of the higher ranks to which any particular species belongs. All species have to at least belong to a genus, but they don't necessarily have to be classified into any higher rank. So you will see species that don't have a rank above genus for whatever particular virus that's been classified in that species. There's an ICTV ID that's linked that will take you to a page that we call the Taxon Details page that gives you more information about the taxonomy of that species and just a little bit of basic information, what its genome type is, and then when that species last underwent a change in the taxonomy. So we're at MSL number 40 right now. So anything listed at MSL 40 has changed since the last year. In this case, this is a new species, and you can scroll down and you can see Wargad virus Xiong new. These aren't always easy to pronounce. Is a new species in this past year. And we also give the proposal for that species. So I'm not going to say anything more about that. There's a lot here. If you're interested in learning more about what each of those columns is giving you, the type of information, we have a column definition tab here that you can look at. And if you want to know what changed in the last year from the previous taxonomy, this tab here shows you everything that's changed since the previous taxonomy in terms of the taxa that existed last year. This does not show you new taxa that have been approved since last year. That you can find out in other ways. And if you just want to know what the current counts are, here are the counts from last year and the counts from this year. Right now, there are 16,215 recognized viral species. And so if you look at this row, you will get 16,215 rows of different species here. Okay, so now let me share the one other resource, the virus metadata resource, that also is an important source of information about these viruses. And here we go. It has a similar format to what the MSL has. It has the information on when this was released. This happened to be released alongside of just about the master species list. So importantly, you have similar type of information here. You have higher ranks, and then you have the list of species. This also is a species-centric resource. But whereas before for the master species list, you had one row for each species, here you might have multiple rows for the same species. And the important part of the VMR is that it provides additional information about that species that gives you a guide point for knowing which viruses are classified into that species. That is, over the years, the ICTV has moved more and more to sequence/genotype-based classification. And so now, if someone is going to propose a new species, along with that species has to be an exemplar virus, and that exemplar virus has to have a complete genomic sequence in order to be classified into a species by the ICTV. If you have an exemplar virus with a complete genomic sequence, that needs to be deposited in a public database like GenBank, and that database is going to have, the GenBank database or EMBL database is going to have an accession number. And so each species that's present here in the master species list, let me make this a little bit bigger, has the species name. It has what's called an E or an A record, E record being the exemplar virus. So this is the key exemplar. This is the name of that virus, the name of the virus isolate as given by the sequence record in GenBank. And then importantly, it provides the GenBank accession number. Some species also have additional isolates that are deemed to be important isolates of that particular species that belong in that species. And so the information on those isolates is also available, their isolate names, and then the accession numbers. And then importantly down here, we have a link to the NCBI sequence record for each one of these. So I'm not going to go any further into this. Again, there's a list of column definitions here that explain all of the information that's available. So if you're interested, please download this VMR spreadsheet from the website, and you can look at this yourself. Okay, so let me stop sharing. So in preparation to show you the information that gives you access to the taxonomy through the website, I just want to mention that with every release, we have a database that backs up the website that contains all of the information available from that release. So we take the basic information that is in the taxonomy proposal that suggested that a new taxa was warranted for maybe new viruses that have just been discovered. And so the ICTV executive committee signs off on those proposals, and the ICTV membership then approves any particular proposal. So at that point, once approved, once a year, again in the spring, in the early spring, there is a new release of the taxonomy. The taxonomy has been loaded into our database, and now all of the tools that you're going to see take their information directly from that database. So all of the tools that we provide should be consistent in terms of the taxonomy and the information derived from that taxonomy that come from that database and therefore are the same irrespective of whatever tool that you happen to be using. All right, so now I'm going to pass this to Steve Powell, who's going to show you the first of the tools that we utilize, that is the taxonomy browser. So Steve, please share your screen with your PowerPoint or the website and take over.
Thank you, Elliot, and hello, everyone. So as Elliot mentioned, my portion is going to just to provide a brief description of the taxonomy browser. The taxonomy browser provides the official ICTV taxonomy from the current and past MSL releases as a hierarchical display in collapsing, expanding rows, which allow the user to drill down to the taxon of interest. The browser is accessed from either the home page, as we see here, or can also be accessed from the taxonomy drop-down list. Help windows on how to do a taxonomy search and on how to use the taxonomy browser are provided, along with a help video. You can also download the current MSL as an Excel spreadsheet. Just below the search window, we see information about the MSL. We have information about the number of taxa within the ranks, that is, within the taxa overall. And also, you can hover over each individual row in the browser and see the number of taxa within each individual rank. Located just above the taxonomy browser are the expand ranks to show dropdown and the hide ranks above dropdown. And so, for instance, what you could do if you want to see certain ranks and hide others, you can use this tool to do that. For instance, if I want to see everything from the level of family down to species, for instance, I could select species from the expand ranks to show dropdown and family from hide ranks above, and then we click go. And it will take a bit, since there's so many species, for us to get the result. And here we go. Another example, say you want to just see all of only one rank, such as just families. Then you can go up and select family from both drop downs and click go, and we get that as well. Now to search the browser, you can enter either a current or past taxon name into the search window. If you know that you're searching for a current taxon name, you can leave the checkbox here to select across all ICTV releases blank, or if you don't know if it's a current name, if it might be a past name, you just don't know, you can click in the checkbox and then it will just search across all ICTV releases. So as an example, suppose you have a species name and you want to find the family or higher order taxon to which it belongs. So we'll try an example here. Reset. Crocodiliid poxvirus, now crocodile pox, which happens to be a current species name. So a search across the current MSL locates the species in the taxonomy. Now we have the search table here, and we can click the view button, which will take us to the location in the hierarchy of the species. Now, if we go back to the search results table, we also see below the view button a history button. And if we click the history button, this will take us to the taxon details page, which provides the history of all the updates to the taxon. Now, we'll return to this taxon details page in the next example and describe it in more detail. So for now, let's try another search. So let's search for measles morbillivirus. Now this is an old species name, which we may or may not know beforehand. Since it's an old species name, if we were to search across the most current release, of course, we get no results. However, if we click in the checkbox to search across all ICTV releases, then we get 7 hits, and that's shown in our search results table. Each occurrence of the species name in past MSLs, as listed in the search result table, is listed in its own row. The rows also show where the species occurs in the taxonomy for each MSL release. The most recent release of the MSL in which we see measles morbillivirus is in the 2021 release at the top of the search results table here. Again, we can click on the view button, and when we do, that will take us to the location in the hierarchy to find that species. Now, to see the history of the taxon, you can either click on the history button, like we saw in the last example, or we can click in the row itself under click for details. As you hover over the row, that click for details will appear. This will also take you to the taxon details page. So if the taxon was renamed or moved or abolished, whatever, the taxon details page will show you that change, and it will also show you when it occurred, which MSL it occurred in, the year, and it will provide the proposal for the change. So in each case, we have the proposal. In our example, the taxonomic hierarchy of the 2021 MSL release, or MSL 37, is shown at the top of the page. And if we scroll down, we see that measles morbillivirus was renamed in 2022 morbillivirus hominis. Future enhancements of the taxon details page include additional links or tabs to other resources, such as the virus properties table, the report chapters, and VMR entries. Now, one other thing I want to show related to the taxonomy browser is the release history, also known as the historical taxonomy browser, which can also be accessed from the taxonomy dropdown. We see here release history. So the release history lists the current and past ICTV taxonomies from the current 2024 release at the top of the table, all the way down to the first report in 1971. We have two help dropdowns that are provided. One for information on the history of ICTV taxonomy releases, and the other for a list of published articles describing each ICTV taxonomy release. As with the taxonomy browser, help windows on how to do a taxonomy search or on how to use the browser are provided. And the table itself provides the release information and the number of taxa in each major rank. Now, if we click on the year of the release, then that takes us to the taxonomy for that year, provided in that expanding collapsing row format that we saw in the taxonomy browser. So that's all that I have. And next on the agenda is Mr. Logan Mims, who will talk about the visual taxonomy browser. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. I'll go ahead and share my screen now. All right. Just let me know if you guys are having trouble seeing my window. My name is Logan. I'm a developer that works on the ICTV project. Today, I'll be talking about our visual taxonomy browser. The visual taxonomy browser was developed to give users another option to view taxonomic data. For example, the way that the visual browser displays taxa is better equipped for presentations or inserting into publications. All browsers here on the ICTV website pull from the same database. This means when we update the data, it is updated for all the taxonomy browsers on the site. I'll now navigate home and show you guys how to get to the visual taxonomy browser. So I'm just going to click home. I'm going to go to the taxonomy dropdown right here, and then I'm going to click visual taxonomy browser. Okay, here at the top of the page, there is a click for help dropdown that gives general information about how to use this web application. Some of what's provided in this click for help I'll be going over now. Starting with the release, by default, the newest ICTV release will be selected, which is MSL 40. If you would like to change that, all you have to do is click the drop down and select a different release, just like so. Next to the release drop down, there's a font size slider that lets you change the font of all the taxa. And then there's also a zoom slider that lets you zoom in and out on the display. In addition to the zoom slider, you can also just do this with your mouse or trackpad using a scroll wheel to zoom in and out like so. To the right of the sliders, we have export options. We have three different export options, which are PNG, SVG, and PDF. All you need to do to select an export is click on it, and then click the blue export button right here. And the export will automatically save to your downloads folder. In order to browse the visual taxonomy, all you need to do is select whichever taxon you want to branch out to. And it'll go to whichever corresponding rank that it belongs to. So I'm all the way out under class at the moment. So if I wanted to collapse this, I could do it the same way that I did when expanding it. So say I want to collapse all the way to phylum, all I need to do is simply click the taxon that's underneath the phylum. Same with if you wanted to collapse all the way to the realm or root node right here, all I need to do is click it and it'll collapse. These taxa also have a pop-up that displays whenever you're hovering over it. It gives its rank, it gives its name, and then it gives some information about the children that are underneath it. In addition to that, there is a link that brings you to the taxon details page, which is this view taxon history. So that's all you need to do to get to the taxon details page. You can also use the search option up here if you have a good idea about which taxon that you're looking for. By default, it'll search whichever release that you have selected. But if you wanted to search past ICTV releases, all you would need to do is select the box right here below the search bar. And I'll do a search right now. So I'm gonna just search a partial text, which is POX, and I'll have some results pop up right here. I'll have a view button right here that will automatically expand to the search result that I want to choose. There's a history button that brings you to the taxon details page. It also gives other information about which release it's from, which rank it is, and then the lineage. So say I want to select potyvirus plumpoxy. All I need to do is click the view button and it'll automatically expand to potyvirus plumpoxy. And once it's expanded, it will highlight the search result that you clicked on. In this instance, we have a bunch of species that are in this particular rank. So in order to save space on the screen, we ended up having to paginate it. So you'll find at the bottom and at the top, there's a more button that you can click through to paginate through the different taxa. And that pretty much wraps up what I needed to talk about with the visual taxonomy browser. I can go ahead and pass it on to the next person. Thank you.
Thanks, Logan. So, just a second here. Let me bring up my browser. So what Steve and Logan have showed you are ways to access the current taxonomy. For those of you who have been paying close attention, you realize there's a problem here. Because in order to access the current taxonomy, you have to know what the current taxonomy is, or you have to know what a past taxonomy is. That is, you have to know the name that's important as you're doing your search. And so, for example, if I were to type in something like smallpox in the taxonomy browser here, I have to spell it right for one thing. If I were to type in smallpox and click search, I don't get anything. If I were to click the select to search across all releases, I don't get anything. Even though we know that smallpox is associated with a disease caused by a pox virus, smallpox has never been the taxon name. It's never been part of the species name for the virus that causes smallpox. And so that raises the question, how can you find what species the virus that causes smallpox belongs to? So for many years, we didn't have a good direct way of doing this, but now we do. And before I show you that, before Eden Black is going to show you that, I just want to explain something about names, because this goes all back to names and what names provide. Let me do this. There, let me share. Okay, so there are multiple names that can be associated with any particular virus. And here we're listing the three main names that are of importance. So, and we have two separate examples. So there's a disease name. So smallpox, as I indicated, is not the name of the disease. It's not even the name of a virus. I'm sorry, smallpox is not the name of a species or a taxon, and it's not even the name of the virus. Smallpox is a name of a disease. A disease name is determined by the World Health Organization, and they update these as necessary, depending on a number of different criteria. A similar example, COVID-19 is also a disease name. It's not the name of the virus that causes COVID-19. It's not the name of the taxon that the virus is classified into. Also, there are some other names as well that have been associated with coronavirus disease that are listed here too. but the official names, whether it be smallpox or COVID-19, again, are determined by the World Health Organization. Now, the virus also has a name. And so for smallpox, the virus that causes the disease smallpox is variola virus. The virus that causes the disease COVID-19 is SARS-CoV-2. Virus names are generally determined by the discoverer of that virus, the one who first publishes it, whether it be in a journal manuscript or perhaps in a GenBank sequence record. And so the discoverer may determine that whether or not that's the name that sticks, whether or not that's the name that is used 10, 20 years after the discovery is really determined by its usage by the scientific community. So there's no governing body that determines the name of a virus. The ICTV does not determine the name of the virus. All the ICTV determines are the names of the official taxa that are used to classify those viruses. So in this case, the species name for variola virus was for many years the same as the virus name, variola virus. You see it's written a little bit differently, it's capitalized and it's in italics. That's the official way of writing a particular species name or name of another taxon. But variola virus is the name of the species. Now, you heard Evelyn mention that the ICTV has now moved to what we call binomial names. And so the binomial name is composed of two components. The first component being the genus name for variola virus, that genus is orthopoxvirus. And then there's the species epithet, that is a second word component that's determined by the study group or the proposer for this particular species. So the Poxviridae study group determined that the new name for the species variola virus will be orthopoxvirus variola. This has the added advantage of clearly distinguishing between the virus name variola virus and the species name orthopoxvirus variola. And so it is the ICTV that determines the names for all official virus taxa from the species rank on up. As an example, for the SARS-CoV-2, it was originally classified into the species severe acute respiratory syndrome related coronavirus. That was a species that was created back in around 2004 to classify the original SARS-CoV-1 virus that caused an outbreak back in 2003, 2004. That name, the binomial name, is now beta coronavirus pandemica. Okay, so that's names. But that doesn't get you anywhere further in knowing that those are the names. You have to know what the names are in order to, again, come up with what the official name of the species happens to be. So in order, and this has been a problem for years, it's been a request to provide a tool that would help you do that. And so finally, we're doing that. And so now Eden Black is going to tell you about a tool we've developed called Find the Species. Eden?
Hello, everyone. My name is Eden Black. I'm a scientist here working with the ICTV. I'm going to share my screen.
Okay, looks good.
Okay. So today I'm going to show you how to use the Find the Species tool. Find the Species is a tool that provides the current taxon name for a virus when you enter a full or partial name or disease name into the search bar. It can be located on the home page under official taxonomic resources here, or by hovering over the taxonomy dropdown and selecting Find a Species. After clicking the tab, the website is directed to the Find the Species page. At the top, you can find the explanation of what Find the Species is. Under this, you can find a detailed list of instructions that explain each component of Find the Species and how it is used. So searches can be done by a specific search strategy. These strategies can be found and selected on the left of the search bar with the drop-down arrow. They are exact match, which finds the species using the exact word or phrase that is entered. All words, which finds the species that includes all the words of your search in any order. Any words, which find the species of your search by querying matches that have any mention of any word or phrase of your search. Lastly, contains, which adds wildcards on both ends of your search to find partial species matches, which is most sensitive, making it longer to use. So first, we're going to use the exact match strategy. For the first example, I will search rhinovirus. So again, exact match outputs results of your query in the order entered that matches exactly to a word or phrase in our virus database, but is not case sensitive. As we see, 8 results from the current ICTV taxa, which means that there were 8 taxa matches with the exact mention of rhinovirus in the current MSL release. Next, notice that there were 94 results of rhinovirus that existed but were abolished. In most cases, viruses are abolished once more accurate findings from modern technology debunked inaccurate classifications. Lastly, 362 results of the exact mention of rhinovirus were located in query from NCBI, but have no ICTV results, meaning that the results is not directly classified on ICTV, but does exist on NCBI and is associated with the word that you searched. If we click the hits to the current ICTV taxa again, the genus is listed first as the first hit because results are presented in hierarchical classification order as they ascend. The official species is presented in bold with a hierarchical taxon starting with family, subfamily, and genus. Let's click this. So the exemplar virus accession number can be selected to access a complete genome and information about the virus. Information such as the locus that the genome is located, the organism name, and a sequence genome can be found at the bottom. Going back to the ICTV website, and I'm going to click the 7th result. We see results that have the matching name, which was matched to your search, the source name from which the results, the database that the results came from, and a superseded taxon name. So in the next example, we will search for the species name of the SARS-CoV virus by its common name, COVID, using exact match. Which has 1 hit to a current ICTV taxa from the 39th master species list. This hit was matched off of the matching name COVID-19 virus from NCBI. With the severe acute respiratory syndrome related coronavirus as its superseded taxon name. The result also included hits from the disease ontology source. The exact match strategy works very well with one-word common names or viruses that common names matches the disease name. A good example for this would be searching measles. Which output a direct hit to its species. This can also be seen if we search mumps. Again, another direct hit to its species. In the next example, we will search herpes simplex virus. Using the all-word strategy in hopes of finding both HSV1 and 2. All words will only find hits that include every word in any order to obtain a match. This time, matches from the 39th master species list were queried from any mention of herpes simplex virus, which resulted in 4 different hits to current ICTV taxa. This search also found 2 matches from the NCBI that had no valid taxon from the ICTV. Going back, as seen, we successfully found both HSV1 and 2. Another example for utilizing the all-word strategy would be with the Epstein-Barr virus by searching Epstein-Barr. Since it has more than one word in the name, it is ideal to use with all-word strategy. Results with Epstein-Barr successfully show hits of both Epstein-Barr species. Next, we will use the any word strategy. We will search Crimean Congo. Using the any word strategy. Any words returns hits including any word present in the query in any order to obtain a match. Crimean Congo is a good example for the any word strategy because Crimean and Congo are uncommon virus names. So querying results pertaining to the mention of Crimean and Congo will retrieve direct results for the virus. Consequently, using virus in the search with the any word strategy will show thousands of results since the word virus is primarily used on ICTV Global. So this is using the same strategy, but I added the word virus just to show a comparison of what happens when you search virus using any words. So lastly, I will show ways to use the contain strategy. The contain strategy uses your query and adds a wildcard character to both ends of your text to look for partial matches. It is important to note that using the contain strategy may take longer to query searches compared to other strategies. So this time I searched immuno to potentially find a species for the human immunodeficiency virus. As shown, only a portion of the common name resulted in successfully locating both human immunodeficiency viruses, which can be seen here. So as shown, using only a portion of the common name resulted in successfully locating both immunodeficiency viruses. Additionally, many viruses that may have descriptive common names, meaning that the name of the virus may include what it affects or how it may affect. So for example, plant viruses are commonly named based off of the plant that it affects or symptoms. If one were interested in locating viruses that affect bananas, they could search banana using the contain strategy. Searching banana using contains will find viruses that affect bananas because 2 wildcards were put on both ends of the word banana. So just a few viruses that affect bananas. Lastly, since many viruses are known to be called hemorrhagic, to find these viruses, one can search a symptom such as hemorrhagic using the contain strategy. To find viruses with a common name and include hemorrhagic to locate viruses that are hemorrhagic. As seen, results from different hemorrhagic viruses were queried. So a lot of these, with this example, a lot of these hits come from the disease ontology source. So in conclusion, if used correctly, Find a Species tool could be helpful for locating the current taxon of viruses by a full or partial name in the search bar. Thank you.
Thank you, Eden. So since this is a new tool for the ICTV, we just went live with this in the first part of this year. We thought that we'd explain a little bit more about how it was developed and how it works. And to do this, I introduced the developer of Find the Species, Don Dempsey.
Thanks, Elliot. Let's see, let me start this. Can everybody see the slides? Great.
Yep.
Okay, so Find the Species tool. What I'm going to talk about is, well, Eden has already very nicely explained what it is and how it works, but I'm going to provide some additional background in case you're curious. So as Elliot mentioned a while back, there are lots of names, lots of different kinds of names. Just as an example, the virus that causes AIDS, I think in 1991 was called human immunodeficiency virus 1. I think that was the species, maybe the virus name. But as you can see here in this table, in this list, there are lots of names it's also known as. HIV is the disease and an acronym. People might refer to it as that. Of course, the current ICTV species name is highlighted in blue, lentivirus humandef1, which many people may not be familiar with. So our solution to that problem is Find the Species, the Find the Species tool. And just a very broad overview, what it does, it searches multiple name databases for virus names, taxon names, or virus-associated terms, such as abbreviations, GenBank accession, etc. It returns matching taxa from the current ICTV taxonomy, if possible. So the goal, you could say, is to return the correct formal name of the species. or other ranks, as it turns out. Otherwise, if there's not a match with the current ICTV taxonomy, it'll return the abolished ICTV taxonomy, or possibly the NCBI name. So let's talk about the name databases. What we've done is we've taken these 4 databases and consolidated them into a single database in Find the Species. The first one, ICTV taxonomy, is what we've been talking about this whole time. All the taxonomic names over historical releases since 1971, I think. So then the virus metadata resource, which Elliot talked about, will include exemplar viruses, isolates, abbreviations, even the GenBank accession, I think, for most of them. Then you're probably familiar with the NCBI database, NCBI taxonomy. So there are some entries here that might not be in ICTV, but NCBI typically does not update as often as we do. So they may have some names that are a little out of date or obsolete. Still a useful resource. The last one, which we just incorporated recently, is disease ontology. This is really helpful. This is disease names from, I guess, created by the WHO, and specifically diseases caused by viruses. So you can search for some disease caused by a virus, earn a match in our current ICTV taxonomy. And as Eden told you about, this is one way to access Find the Species from any page. There's a taxonomy tab, and you can select it there. And also it's available on the home page as a search box. And if you search on the home page, it'll take you to the Find the Species page. So rather than show you in the browser, Eden has already shown you what it looks like and how it's used. So I want to show you this as maybe a deeper dive into what you're actually seeing here. In this case, as an example, let's assume we search for poliovirus, and you'll see that there are 2 hits to the current ICTV taxa, no abolished ICTV results, and there's some couple hits probably from NCBI. But what are we seeing here when we see these search results? Well, what's in the gray part here is the current ICTV taxon. Now that's what I'd like to explain in some detail. This may be intuitive, it may be completely obvious, but I'll show you what the different parts are very briefly. So the first thing is this icon here. By default, all of these are collapsed. So you don't see the individual matches, you just see the results. But if you click on this, it expands and you can see the actual matches from the named databases. We have the result number. The lineage, generally just family and below, family, subfamily, genus, etc. We have the taxonomic rank and the species name. And this is the ICTV current species name, of course, and it's linked to the taxon details page, which lists the history of that particular taxon. Then we have the exemplar virus name. This would be from VMR, and we have a link to GenBank for that virus. Hopefully very convenient. So that's the search result. The next section is maybe a little more interesting, and that is the matches, the individual matches that were made in the database. So you get to see how we arrived at this result. What about this match the database entries? Okay, so the first part is probably pretty obvious, the matching text. So as I mentioned, we search for poliovirus, and you see that this is actually, it's highlighted in the match. So that's how this particular match appeared in our results. Murine poliovirus, strain bean 8386. So we talk about the we refer to the taxonomy database or the name database where this match was found. Then we have the name type. So what we've done here with name type, this can be a little confusing sometimes. Occasionally it's very obvious, like taxon name or scientific name. But what we've done is we've taken mostly GenBank name classes. I call it name type here because to me that's a little more intuitive. So as you see here is a list of all the different name types or name classes that we include, along with the number of names of that type in parentheses there. And if you have questions about what these refer to, like in part or authority, I'd like to refer you to the Find the Species page in the help section. Gives you some good information and hopefully a good explanation of what these name types mean. The last part is I saved the most complicated for last, superseded taxon name. That may not be intuitive, so I want to explain what it means, why it's there. So superseded taxon name. First of all, I want to take you through the chain of events of the matching. So as you know, this search text we're using for the example is poliovirus. And that matched the text poliovirus in murine poliovirus strain bean 8386. Well, I think this was from the NCBI database. And this strain, I assume it's a strain, has the species cardiovirus B, which is actually an older name, but this was in CBI. It happens to match our species name back from 2022, the MSL number 38. So, oh, too far. So that's how that connects here. It matches that text. Then this older version has a current version, which is cardiovirus thalieri. Hopefully I didn't butcher the pronunciation of that, but that's the current ICTV name. So that gives you an idea when you see a superseded name, taxon name in a match, what that's trying to explain is how we got here from here, how we got to the current name from the search text or the matching name. The last thing I'd like to talk about is our future plans. Excuse me. One update that we hope to release very soon is the ability for you as the users to submit names that you think would be helpful, that maybe we've missed, or maybe something else that's would be a helpful search text, whether it's a disease name or common name, etc. So hopefully within the next month or so, we'll have that feature added so that you can submit names. And lastly,
Don, I might add that in order for that to work, and this is apropos to the previous slide, the name has to be associated with an ICTV species. It could be an older species name, ideally it'd be a current species name, but that's how all of this works. The names that are matched, dependent upon whatever you enter into the search box, have to in some way be associated at some time in some database with a species.
That's right. And it can also have an NCBI tax ID if we have that. But if you have that, you might as well give us the name as well. Thank you, Elliot. The last thing is other name databases. And I have a question mark here because it's I'd like for you to suggest some. If you're aware of any that you can that we could include, something like disease ontology, let us know. We'd love to hear about it, and hopefully we can incorporate it. So thank you.
All right, thanks, Don. So we've told you about some of the major resources, some of the major search applications that we're providing, but there is a lot of additional data that the ICTV provides that's associated with the taxa and the viruses that are classified into those taxa. And so what I wanted to do is just give you an overview of what that information is and how you find it. So let's come back to the main ICTV webpage here. Get rid of submits thing. Okay. So if we look at the taxonomy menu here, there is a page called Taxon Name Etymology. And so this gives the etymology of all of the higher ranked names that are available from usually family on up. So when someone submits a proposal for a new taxa or new taxon, that proposal has to include justification of the name. And so that will include the etymology of the name, where it came from. And we capture that information and we make it available in that taxon details page that shows you the history of any particular taxa. And this page here will give you access to all of the names that are available. In this case, all of the realms are listed. But if you wanted to go to a particular realm, we could just look at the Riboviria by checking this. And now you see that, for example, the name Riboviria came from ribo for nucleic acid, referring to the genome of the viruses in the realm, and viria for the realm taxa. So that's how that name was derived. That's pretty obvious, but a lot of these have much more complex sources for where that name came from. So name information is available there. When you look at this report drop-down menu, the report drop-down menu is gives you access to the ICTV report. So many of you may remember that the ICTV used to publish a large, thick, upwards of several thousand-page book every several years. And that was the ICTV report that listed the complete current taxonomy that was recognized by the ICTV. And there was a chapter for each family that gave substantial descriptive information. Well, keeping that report up to date and actually publishing it as a hard copy became much too difficult, and you can't print books. It would have to have been a 2-volume book. So we went to an online report now. And so all of those chapters are now included in this online report. So as, for example, you wanted to see all of the report chapters available for double-stranded DNA viruses, they're here. If we would click on the Adenoviridae report chapter, we get the listing of the family and all of the genera and additional information. So if you click on family, then you get a complete description with figures of the Adenoviridae family, and then anything specific to a particular genus is available by clicking on genus. Importantly, at the end of every genus section is a listing of all of the species and all of the virus isolates that are classified into that species. This is, in essence, the same information that comes from the VMR, but it's provided here in the report chapters. And you can get a listing of the species for all of the species in the family here, along with all of the isolates. So this is a way, if you don't have direct access to the VMR, you can get a link to all of the exemplar viruses and other associated viruses and their accession numbers that are linked to NCBI here. So these are the report chapters, but the report also has other information available. So if we go back here, you can go to virus diagrams. And so here we have diagrams of many of the viruses that make up, that are classified into these different families here. If we go to vertebrates, then we see some of the vertebrate families. You may recognize these diagrams. They come from the Viral Zone database, and our friends at Viral Zone, thankfully, were able to make these available to us. And so we're providing them here, classified roughly according to host, and then within host, classified according to their genome type. So those are available there. Then if we have the next link here called virus properties. And so again, whenever anybody submits a proposal for a new taxon, that proposal includes a lot of information about the properties of the virus. from the genome type that comprises the genome that codes for the particular proteins, the topology of the genome size, whether or not it includes an envelope, the shape of the virion, the virion size, and the general indication of the hosts that are infected, the host types that are infected by viruses in these particular families. This virus properties list is by family, so there's one listing for each family. This has not yet been updated for MSL 40, the release that came out last week. It will be updated in the next several weeks. And so you can ask interesting questions here. You can ask, okay, for any DNA virus that is single-stranded, are any of those have an envelope? And we do that here, and we see there's only one family of viruses that's enveloped and has DNA in a single-stranded topology, and that's the Pleolipoviridae. But if we want to say any that don't have, so DNA, single-stranded DNA viruses, then you see that there are 15 different viral families that have DNA as their genome type and are single-stranded. And you can do the same here. You can look at organization, and you can look for only ones that are circular. And so you get the names on 12 different families. And so this can be kind of an interesting exploration of the phenotypic properties of the virus that are classified into these particular taxa. Okay, and then just we sort of, Steve showed you when you came here to the taxonomy browser that we have pop-up information that gives you a little bit of information about the page you're looking at, but then there are also videos that are available. And if you go to the help link here, that gives you access to a number of videos that describe different aspects of how to use the ICTV website. And then the webinar video will appear here. If you click on this now, you'll be taken to the video that was recorded from last year's webinar. And so we'll add the video from this year's webinar onto this page here. Okay, so that's pretty, so future plans. So future plans are some of the final things that we wanted to talk about. Let me bring that up here. Let me just share my screen. Okay, so future things that are on our list amongst lots of different things are incremental enhances to the existing tools. So we're always tweaking the tools that we have to make them better. One of the things we're working on is a demarcation criteria database. One of the questions that came in during this webinar was, what's the percent cutoff for identity between two viruses such that you'd have a new species? Well, information like that, one changes from one family to another. It may change from one genus to another. So for example, DNA viruses, they have a percent cutoff for new species that's a lot higher than the more highly mutating RNA viruses. And so that information is in report chapters frequently and is also provided in the proposals that are put together for proposing a new taxon. But there's no one consolidated database that coalesces all that information. We've made a start on providing that demarcation criteria database. It is a complex task, but it's something that we hope to have provided within the next year or two. In addition to the Find the Species tool, we want to provide something that right now we're calling Find the Virus. So let's say you have isolated a new virus and you just want to see what viruses it might be like in terms of the classification of those existing viruses into an existing species. So the Find the Virus tool will do a search using the sequence of your new virus against a database of the sequences of all the viruses that make up the exemplars of ICTV species, and it'll tell you which one of those viruses that's an exemplar is most closely related to the virus that you've just isolated. It's not a classification tool. It's not going to tell you whether or not your particular new virus warrants inclusion in a current species or warrants a new species, but it'll at least give you an idea of how closely related it is to a virus that's classified into an existing species. Another question that we had was whether or not there's a way you can access all of our data programmatically. There's sort of a simple way of doing that now, but we don't have yet what we would call a full-fledged application programming interface, or API, for you computer geeks. And so that's something that we will also be developing in the next year. And then we're always open to suggestions. So anyone who has a suggestion as to a new tool or something that might be helpful in utilizing the current virus taxonomy, please let us know. And let me just stop sharing for a minute and go back to the website. And so if you're at the homepage of the website, you can just come down here and you see down near the bottom, for help or questions, send an email to this link here. And so that link will get you get an email that's sent to me, and then either I or someone else connected with the ICTV will respond. I also want to close to indicate that in addition to NIH funding, any number of different organizations have also contributed over the years to the ICTV. And so the links to those organizations, like the American Society for Virology, or Welcome, or Microbiology Society, IUMS, all of these have contributed in one way or another. So those links are here. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing at this point in time, and we have about 15 minutes left to the webinar. And so what we would ask you to do is to type in questions that you may have, and we'll try to answer those verbally. We've answered a number of questions using the Q&A and type them in, but if you want to ask your question again or refine it a little bit, please just type it in. And I'm just going to sit here and read the questions, and I may ask someone else who's connected with the webinar to help answer them. Okay, first question is, could you provide DOIs for species, something that would provide continuity as the taxonomy changes? So this is something we've discussed for many years. How can we provide a sort of for a link in the same way that PubMed ID might link you to publication? Is there a digital object identifier, a DOI, that could link a particular taxon, for example, a species? And so you would just have to keep track of that number in order to get information about that species. This is something that we've talked about, and I think we're moving much closer to doing that, especially given that there are a number of tools and databases that make doing so a lot easier. So this is something that we hope to include in the next year. Follow-up was something similar to the tax ID on NCBI. I should mention that we do have an ICTV ID that's associated with each one of our taxa. And so, for example, if you were to bring up the taxon details page for a particular species, let me just show that real quick. I may stay in the browser because a number of examples are more easily answered that way. So if we go to the taxonomy browser, and let's just go to Variola here. Oops, and spelling counts. Okay, and if we were to go to Variola here, and I'm going to click on history, this brings us to that taxon details page. If you look at the URL, there's what's called a tax node ID. So that's an ID that can be used to specifically identify the species. That can change as the taxonomy changes. Let's say the name changes over the years. There's another ID, an ICTV ID, that remains consistent across all of the changes for any particular taxon. Those IDs are given in the MSL. So you can get ICTV IDs for each taxon in the MSL, and that will be useful certainly in the API, or you can just type in these IDs here and go directly to the taxon details page for that particular taxon. How how are new virus genera proposed, based on which property. So I haven't talked about this very much. The way the ICTV handles new taxa, whether it be a new species, a new genus, or higher rank, is that study groups, Evelyn talked about study groups, which are sort of family specific. That study group will propose a new taxon based upon information that's collected in the literature, based upon discovery of new viruses. They may then propose that, and then that will then go through the process of being okayed by the executive committee and then ratified by the membership. Individuals, any individual can also make a proposal for a new taxa. So if you were the one who discovered a new virus and you think it's a new species, then you can go and you can fill out the proposal form and submit that to the subcommittee chair, and that then will be evaluated by the study group. And so if you look here in the taxonomy menu, and down at the bottom it says proposal template files, these are the files you need to download in order to propose a new taxon. In addition, if you come here and you go to proposals and approve proposals, this gives you access to all the proposals that were used in order to create a new taxon. And so, for example, if you want to know all the proposals that were submitted that gave rise to the current taxonomy, MSL 40, select 2024. Yes, I know it's 2025, but these proposals were vetted by the executive committee back in July of 2024. That's why it's dated 2024. This gives you all the proposals that were submitted. You can see here that if we go to last, there were 258 separate proposals submitted for the current taxonomy. Let me go to the beginning. Let's say you were only interested in fungal proposals. And let me apologize. Most of our examples that we've given over the course of this webinar were for animal viruses. My group happens to be animal virologists, so that's what we go to first. But certainly the ICTV deals with all viruses, irrespective of host. And so these are all the proposals that were submitted for new fungal viruses. Every proposal has a Word document that explains why there's justification for creating the new taxon, and then a spreadsheet that lists row by row each of the new taxa that were proposed, and in this case accepted, because all of these proposals were accepted. And you can download those, and they form a good guide as to what you may need to do if you wanted to submit your own proposal. They also list the demarcation criteria for the particular families that needed to be satisfied in order to create new species or new genera or new families. Okay, let's see. Does the binomial include viroids? So the binomial nomenclature includes all viruses and virus-like entities that the ICTV classifies. If you want to know what the ICTV classifies, you can go to the About menu and About the ICTV, and the code, which is the International Code of Virus Classification Nomenclature, gives you all of the criteria that the ICTV uses to both classify and name viral species and other related entities similar to viruses. And that's all explained here. There also was approved this past year an update to the code that cleaned up the language a bit and clarified a number of things. That is not yet on this website. That's something that I need to do to get it up on the website over the next week or two. Okay, let's see. Can NCBI viral sequences accession numbers be used to locate virus species names in the ICTV website? Don mentioned that that can happen in Find the Species. It will recognize accession numbers for accession numbers that appear in the VMR. So if I'm going back to the VMR now, and I'm just gonna select an accession number for a particular exemplar virus. And so now if I go to Find the Species and type in that accession number and click search, you will see that it will come up with the species Coronavirus beta, and you see down below it here that that match to the VMR. That will not work with anything that is not part of that is not in the VMR, that is either an exemplar or an accessory virus. We're thinking about adding that, but that would mean adding the complete NCBI record for all viruses that are classified in NCBI, all virus sequences that are present in NCBI. So that would be quite a large undertaking, but it is something that we can consider. Okay, let's see. Another question. Do you plan to add tools, data about interspecies recombination and its impact on taxonomy? So suffice it to say that the basis of the ICTV taxonomy, as I indicated previously, is the sequence of the viruses that we're dealing with. And frequently, part of the demarcation criteria for classification is based on a phylogenetic analysis of that sequence data. Phylogenetic analysis of sequence data generally assumes that recombination is not taking place. Or if recombination is taking place, you try to reconstruct that phylogeny on the basis of the regions of the viral genomes that show little or very limited recombination. When recombination comes into play, that messes things up. It is really up to the study group and the people who are proposing new taxa when there is significant recombination to talk about how that is taken into account when proposing new taxa. But I would say that's an area of still active research as to how you can classify viruses that undergo extensive recombination. Certainly that happens with bacterial viruses. I don't know, Evelyn, if you want to say anything on that account? Putting you on the spot.
I'm sorry, I missed the question, the original question.
How do you take into account recombination when you're dealing with virus classification? And I said this especially is a problem with bacterial viruses.
Yeah, I mean, it is indeed an issue with some bacterial viruses. And one of the things that this is one of the reasons why some of the bacteriophage genomes are not well classified at all of the ranks, because we still haven't fully figured out what the best way forward is. So you might find a lot of bacteriophage genomes, bacteriophages classified at the species and the genus level, but then unclassified at the family level because we cannot quite figure out where our demarcation criteria are, but then they are again classified at the class level. And this is something that we are, and people across the world are actively working on. What is what are the genes, what's a portion of the genome that we think carries the evolutionary information for these viruses, and we'll have to make a decision on what part does and what part we kind of ignore because of the recombination.
Thanks, Evelyn. So we are coming to the end of the webinar. I want to end by answering sort of two questions at once because they show important information. One was, do we have phylogenetic trees? Well, if you look at the ICTV report, in this case, this is adenovirus, usually at the family section of the chapter, if you scroll down, you're going to find a phylogenetic tree of that family. And in this case, you'll see here, there are a lot of different species within the Adenoviridae, but there is a phylogenetic tree there. And importantly, if you go to the resources section of the chapter, that will provide you both with the tree file in Newick format and the alignment of all of the sequences in FASTA format that were used to reconstruct that tree. And then finally, there was a question about the images we have, whether it be images from the visual browser, or if you look, there are also a lot of images in these report chapters. Everything on the ICTV website, let me go home, and if we go to the footer here, you see is licensed under a Creative Commons attribute license, share alike 4.0. You can click on that to get the details. But what it means is that you don't have to get permissions for use of any of the information or figures on the ICTV website. You can just use them as they are in your publication or your PowerPoint. You just need to cite, of course, the ICTV. The only exception to that is that there's some figures that are included in the ICTV report that were themselves reproduced with permission from someone else. They were previously reproduced in some manuscript that's not of an ICTV origin. Those are indicated at the bottom of the figure. If you see that, then it will be up to you to get permissions to use that. So I pretty much want to end up there. I do, though, want to thank one person in particular. You've seen a lot of information on virus etymology. You've seen information on the virus diagrams here, on the virus properties. All of that takes significant effort to compile. And I want to thank our new life member, Stuart Seidel, who has long served in the ICTV, but he is still working. He is compiling that information on etymology and properties and diagrams. And so a lot of the information you see has come about as a result of the hard work of Stuart, and then also, of course, of the hard work of everyone else. And so whether that be the people currently serving on the executive committee, whether that be the people who do a lot of the work, that is the support personnel in the ICTV, they're here. Donald Smith is responsible for the ICTV report. That report is put together by study group chairs and subcommittee members, but Donald is the one who sort of takes the role of getting them to put all of that together and badgering them to submit a new family chapter for new families that haven't yet made it into the ICTV report. So I'm going to thank everybody here, everybody who's participated, everybody who has sat for the last hour and a half and watched this webinar. You're submitting lots of other questions, so I'm going to leave the Q&A open for a little while, and those questions we'll try to answer, or again, if we can't answer them now, we'll get a list of them and we'll answer them and provide the answers on the website. And I think we also will have the answers of the questions that have already been answered up on the website as well. So thank you, everyone, and goodbye for now. And we look forward to doing this again in the future.